back to Fearless Thinkers, the BTS podcast. I'm Masami Cookson, and your host today is Rick Cheatham. This episode is part 2 of our conversation with Jessica Skon, the new president and CEO of BTS Group. Today, Rick and Jessica discuss BTS's big-hearted and high-performing culture. If you didn't catch part 1 on the history of BTS and Jessica's path, you can find it on your preferred streaming platform. Let's get into it.
Now, I'd actually like to dig a little deeper into the words big-hearted and high-performing, but could you dig a little bit deeper into what that looks like? As leaders or looking across the business in general, how does a big-hearted and high-performing business function? How do you know if you have it or don't?
Sure. It forces us to look inwardly, right, at the BTS culture first, because that's where the language came from. And it was 2016. North America had just single-digit growth for the last 4 or 5 years, which, if you're trying to run a high-performing firm and give your people long-term careers, you have to grow faster than that for that to happen. And so what the leadership team in North America and I were reflecting on in terms of what do we want to protect and then what do we need to do differently, one of the things that was clear, which we all loved, was this language that was surfacing around, we're a big-hearted company. And I think what we meant by that was we have fun with each other, we care for each other, we have each other's backs, we work hard, we play hard. We didn't want to lose that. It felt more like a family than it did something else. And at the same time, we're like, okay, but we have to have that and be high performing. And what do we mean by high performing? Well, double-digit growth quarter over quarter, probably a good start, right? Like consecutive, consistent double-digit quarter-on-quarter growth. So, and then we went through, well, on what do we need to change to make that happen, right? And there was a whole series of things, but that's what we mean by being big-hearted and high-performing, is you both get superior shareholder returns and your people feel cared for. They feel more like they're part of a family, but they themselves are also becoming more and more high-performing over time, right? So it's not soft, but it's the mix of the two. And I will say this just on the shareholder returns part, that since BTS went public in 2001, our average shareholder return is 18%, which is the equivalent of Buffett. So I would say we could also say that we're high performing from a shareholder returning perspective. And now, Rick, kind of back to your question of unpacking this a little bit more around what does it look and feel like in action, right? Or the artifacts that you would see or feel if you have it. And I think this is a journey that we'll continue to hone and understand and put words around. And I think I've personally been influenced by some amazing leaders who lead this way and have institutionalized this. Herb Kelleher, founder of Southwest Airlines, was a good friend. I've worked with some amazing 4-star generals. I think there's pockets of our military who do this beautifully. We've studied high-performing, environments from sports teams and symphonies and all of that. So it's kind of all of this is coming together. But going into your question, I mentioned this, but I'll say it again, and I have a few things. One is people should feel cared for. And that is going to feel a little different based on each person. But when they think about the relationship with their direct leader, their peers around them, and the firm, they should feel like people have their backs, right? They should feel like someone knows more about them than their performance. They know about their personal life a bit. They know what's important to them, that they have friends at work that show up for them when they have issues, right? Outside of the job and inside of the job. And I think this is an important one. And it's the leader's role. And this culture would start from the top. It's what happens to that person when something goes wrong. In our world, you lose a deal or you get a no on something you were accounting for. We have a quality issue or an upset customer. What's their experience, right? If you have a culture where the person feels cared for, there is no shame in that moment. That is not the time to pile on, right? And make them feel even worse or make them feel small. When there is an issue and they come to you as their leader, I believe the only way to respond is, thank you so much for telling me. Let's work on this. And that leader becomes right next to them, co-owns the problem, is a thought partner, pulls in resources to support it, but has this vibe with them of, I'm here with you, we're the same team, right? And I think the other thing that's a part of that is to realize and believe that in the low moments is when the most learning is possible. I believe that. I think the high moments build confidence. I think the low moments build intense learning, right? And wisdom that propels you forward into a much stronger position. It's like you want to come out of a downturn a stronger company. You want to come out of a bad moment a much stronger person, right? And team. And so I think that's a key part of helping people feel cared for. I think another one is making sure you give really clear ownership and accountability. And I've learned from our founder, I think, how to do this well. We've characterized one of Henrik's strengths as, or a high value for him, is freedom. And what he taught me to do with my direct reports is to say, okay, you got this, right? Like either you own an office, so you own the revenue, or you own a region, so you own a whole full P&L, or you own the project, whatever it might be. And then to say to them, look, if I don't hear from you, I'm assuming everything's great, right? You're going to hit your quarterly numbers, or the client's really happy, or your team is super engaged. But what I do want to hear from you on is the following three things. So if it's a head of office, I would say, I want to know as soon as you think you might not hit your quarterly number. I want to know if you think some of our best talent is at risk of leaving. And I want to know if you think we're at risk of a quality issue with a customer. As long as you tell me those things, then I'll be their partner. And giving somebody clear ownership and accountability and setting it up that way, I think gives a lot of trust. And then again, it's all about how you help them when the times get tough. I think the company owes leaders real-time data, right? And reports and dashboards that can make them be as high performing and insightful as possible. And that's an act of service to them. So, and I think the world is getting to an amazing potential with enterprise AI and the amount of data and real-time dashboards that we're giving to people. But, even without the most advanced AI, I think the basics should be provided, right? So that people can be thinking about continuous improvement and continuously raising the bar on performance for themselves and for their team. And data kind of keeps everyone honest, right? And it takes the hyperbole and the drama out of the look at the current state.
And I think it's one thing our clients experience when they engage with us historically. And until we really started to break it down over the last few years, I think we mainly looked at it as making sure we're hiring the right people and acting in service to them versus control. And I think so many times, like you've said, when I personally have made huge mistakes, and the conversation was more around, okay, so what are we going to do to solve this? Not, you're never going to do this again. Didn't you think better? Didn't you know better? Kind of thing. I do want to dig deeper with you though, because, well, I think it would be worthwhile, because I was involved in this a bit, but I think you were deeper on the inside of it, since it is so recent. And actually, since Henrik was just featured in a blog post on the World Economic Forum talking about it just a little bit, share just quickly how this came to life as we were looking at the situation our business was in, where the majority of our client experiences, or how the majority of our clients' experience happened, and the decisions that were made to basically help us come out of the pandemic stronger than ever versus, potentially beaten down and hollowed out.
Yeah, I think February, March of 2020 is a great example of big-hearted and high-performing in action. We started to realize what the global impact could be on our business when we saw COVID hit both South Korea and Italy, I think in the third week of February or sometime around there. And that's when our founder realized, oh my God, this is going to go global. And 60 to 70% of our revenue is typically being done in person with our clients. So we spent about a week, looking at cash scenarios and making a 5-point plan. And plan number one was to build up the biggest cash war chest possible. So he and our CFOs quickly took out as much debt and line of credit as they could, but we made a plan just in case that we would be unprofitable, let's say, for a couple of years. We didn't need it. We ended up being profitable even in the first year, and we only shrunk by about 20% versus the 60 to 70, but still building up a cash war chest and having more than your competitors is critical in a macroeconomic decline like that. That was step number one. Step number two was the decision to have no economic layoffs, which is consistent with 30 plus years at BTS. It's hard to be both big-hearted and high-performing and lay off people at a whim. Number 3, we have always, through every economic downturn, taken the long-term view. Always. And we watched our competitors, both traditional consulting firms and HR consulting firms, by May do big layoffs in 2020, and then already in the summer try to hire them back. That is not BTS. We have never done that. We hold our team, we keep them in the downturn, and our belief is you can use that time and space to upskill, reskill, become more innovative, and come out a much, much stronger company. And you can also hire because there's typically great talent available in those markets. So we did those 2 things. Number 3 is we held the belief that all of our services will be done virtually immediately tomorrow. There was no space for, well, maybe this one will work and that one won't. It was, in order to best serve our clients, let's bring them the confidence and the capabilities to do what their people need right now in this virtual environment. And what's so cool about the BTS culture, and this is a benefit of everybody feeling cared for and free to be themselves and being free to be innovative with no backlash if you innovate the wrong thing, right? Or whatever, is we just, a global Slack channel was created instantly from one of our consultants out of Australia. I think it was Keep Calm and Corona on or something. But immediately, globally, everyone was giving each other tips. So across the broad portfolio of services, try this, try this, try that. Here's what's happening on Zoom versus MS Teams. Here's our compatibility on our software platforms with different SIMs. And it was just like 1,100 people helping each other as fast as possible. And because BTSers are brave, and I think it's the culture that makes them that way, they just went out and told clients, I know you were going to cancel your top 200 meeting in 2 days. We'll just do it virtually and we got this, right? Or, hey, look, your people need now to know how to engage with their customers virtually. Let's change our initiative and equip them to do that. We'll be ready in 2 weeks. We didn't charge our customers any extra. We just converted immediately for free and with speed, and tried to be as helpful as we could to them.
Well, Jess, I have to say, as always, it's a pleasure just hanging out and reflecting, thinking, and planning to go do great things. So really, really appreciate the time and the thinking today.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick.
Pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
If you'd like to stay up to date on the latest from the Fearless Thinkers podcast, please subscribe. Links to all of the relevant content discussed in today's podcast are in the show notes, or you can always reach us at bts.com. Thanks again.